G'day, it's your old mate Matthew here from the Yarnsman podcast. Today we have Craig Fortune on the podcast. We get into a few things, and the reason I found it interesting is he's a fellow successfully failed entrepreneur. We obviously talk about his business failure, depression around that, and the behaviour change he's working on now. As we get into depression and various things there, if you find that triggering, please do step out or take a look at the support resources on our website. Hope you enjoy the yarn. Hello and welcome to the Yarnsman podcast. This afternoon we have Craig Fortune with us. How are you, Craig?
I'm good, thanks, Matthew. And I appreciate the invite to come and join you.
No, it's good to have you here. Craig is husband, father, successfully failed entrepreneur. I classify myself as one of those. So that's and you're not yet a yarnsman, but you will be soon.
Absolutely, yeah. Looking forward to that too.
Yeah, good man. Well, diving into it, what have you struggled with in the last week?
What I really struggled with is my own boundaries, personal boundaries. I got told off a little bit by my wife last night, and justifiably so, because I spent most of the weekend working. Which I don't like to do. As you mentioned, I've got a couple of kids, and that should be my time to spend with them. But I got excited about an upcoming project, and I let that get away on me. So that was a little bit frustrating.
Well, you're in a tough phase of new business, and so I completely understand that. So that's I bet that's going to be an ongoing journey for you.
Yeah, I think potentially, but I think also the journey I've been on. For me, it's about learning those lessons and not repeating them as I go forward. So hopefully I can take the important lessons from my journey to this point and not repeat my mistakes.
Yeah. What's something you want to work on in the next week?
I guess the opposite of that, just being more present with my kids. And also I let myself down a little bit with some training that I'm doing, and then that affected me emotionally, because I wasn't training and I should have been training. So just to be a little bit better at planning and focusing on the important things at that time, what needs to be done and when.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I understand that. What are you proud of?
I'm proud of my wife. She's just got a job that she's just really loving. She's really, really good at. She's been in there 3 weeks, and she's just got some really great feedback from her boss. So really proud of her. Proud of my youngest daughter, who's only 9. We've had so my wife's new role sees her in Auckland 3 days a week. And our youngest daughter's really, she has responded far better to that than we thought she might, because it's with our journey up till now, we've been around for her the whole time. So for mum not to be there, so she's been an absolute trooper. So really proud of the way she's kind of dealt with that big change to her routine.
Mm. Yeah, that must be an interesting one with, I suppose yourself and new business, mum somewhere else. So it must be that sort of changing of the guard a wee bit.
Yeah, there's a lot of change. In the last probably 9 months has been, significant amount of change for both of us in our lives, and then obviously our children as well by extension. But it's quite different. For the last 12 years, my wife and I have worked together, lived together, 24/7, and now she's away 3 days of the week. So it's a lot of change, but change is good sometimes, right? Change doesn't have to be bad. Mm-hmm. So,
what gives you hope?
It's a really good question, and I can't. As a person, I am a hopeful person. I have seen a lot, I've done a lot, and I consider myself to be quite a positive person, and I place a lot of value on mindset. So what gives me hope is the future, the opportunities that I can create for myself and my family. just moving forward, I think. The opportunity to move forward, the ability to move forward, the fact that I can move forward and continue to move forward, I think that's what gives me hope.
I like that. Yeah, create your own opportunities.
Yeah,
like
absolutely. And I think that probably sums it up. Yeah, the opportunity to create my future. I think that gives me hope.
Yeah, that's what gets me out of the bed in the morning.
Yeah.
So diving into it a bit deeper, what's a yarn you'd like to share?
I think that the big thing for me, because I know this is that well-being is such a vital part of our lives these days, and we are. I think as a society, we're slowly moving forward in those conversations, right? And we're a little bit more. Every year we seem to be a little bit more able to have those conversations. Become a bit more part of society, having those conversations and dealing with well-being. So for me, I guess it's just my story of the challenges that I've had, and in some ways I don't. We all have challenges, right? So I don't think I'm unique. The challenges I may be unique, but it just means they're different. Doesn't mean I've had more challenges than the next person.
It's your own story. It's your own yarn, and no story's better or worse.
True. Yeah. So if I go way back, I've had a parent die when I wasn't super young. I was 30. My dad was 56. Passed away with cancer. That's always traumatic, right? When you don't expect that to happen, he was far too young for that to happen. I went through a divorce, which ironically wasn't that traumatic. It was the right thing at the time. We had the earthquakes. One of my children really affected by the earthquakes. That was difficult. I spent months and months lying on the floor beside their bed while they slept, and that was a difficult time. And we've all had those experiences. And then, probably the most recent challenge and effect on my well-being is a story that I repeat, in some of the presentations that I give. And we had a business. My wife and I owned a business for around 12 years. And the introduction is a successful failure is part of that. We were successful until we weren't, and we went into liquidation in March this year, voluntary liquidation. But it's about 6 years into our business. I remember I was making. I had some meetings down south that I had to go to down in Timaru and whatnot, and I was upstairs. I were overnight. It was an overnight trip. I was upstairs packing my bag, and my wife was there, probably helping. I'm not sure why she was in the bedroom with me, but I just remember just breaking out in tears, just uncontrollable sobbing, and things had been tough and overwhelming and whatnot, and it all kind of came to a head then, and I got myself together and went down, did my meetings, did all what I needed to do, and came back, and my wife and I talked and decided I probably need to go to the doctor. So I made a doctor's appointment, went to the doctor, broke down in tears at the doctor's, and he said, look, I think you've probably got depression. So I took some pills, still take some pills, and that kind of became just a big part of me moving forward. It's one of those things we hear people say, this person suffers from depression, or I suffer from depression, or that person suffers from depression. And I really dislike that. I have depression. I don't suffer from it. It's just, I have a cold, I have a broken leg, it's part of who I am at the moment. That may change as I grow and move forward. But right now I have depression. But this whole attitude that I suffer from it, I'm not in a fetal position every night, crying myself to sleep. I don't suffer from it. I just have depression. And that's something that I'm okay with. It's something I don't hide. It's something I don't I'm not embarrassed by. I'm not, if people want to find out what it's like for me or what it has been like for me having depression, I'm happy to talk about it. It's not, I don't think it's taboo, and I don't think it should be taboo, to discuss. So that was probably a really huge turning point for me. Up until that point, life was just challenging. Working all the time, feeling that I had to work all the time. I owned this business. I was in charge. I had to make all the decisions and make the right ones. If I wasn't working, then who was going to get it done? All those things that probably a million entrepreneurs go through, right? And then obviously the liquidation was huge. That was in the press. It was all over social media. There's some unpleasant things being said, as you can imagine. Social media is a bit of a hive for that. But there were upset people, a lot of upset people, and that certainly wasn't our intention, but that was the result. So that was a really, really difficult period of time too, and I think just for me, I was fortunate that I had support networks. I've got a pretty good support network around me, with not just my wife but my adult children, good friends, family. So I think that really helped me through that particular period. But also, I spoke about it before, I'm a big believer in the value and the power of mindset. And there's something that, without being flippant, there's something that I remember Tom Hanks saying. There's a movie I've seen of Tom Hanks with all these other stars, and he talks about this too shall pass.
When we talk about Tom Hanks, all I think is you wouldn't go to travelling with Tom Hanks.
No, he hasn't had a great record. No. Was it Captain Phillips, the plane crash, the Alone on the Island?
Castaway, and there was one other.
Yeah, no.
Obviously that's been his sort of mindset with all the movies he's done.
Yeah. But yeah, it's that was probably something that I said over and over to myself, that this too shall pass. As I said, I don't mean that to be flippant in that I didn't care, but I didn't want to hold on to those feelings that I had at the time, and I knew that people were angry, and some people had a right to be angry, and I respect that. And people, when you're angry, you kind of lash out, and we want to blame someone, right? So I think there were people that were saying things that maybe normally wouldn't have said those things because of the emotions that they were going through. So I didn't, I didn't get upset with those people, and they passed. It will pass.
So going back to the 6 years, you're let's call it you're packing your suitcase breakdown. I know I've probably had at least one or two of those, which resulted in me quitting a job. What do you think really brought that on? Was that overwork, the identity, the pressure of running a business, all the things?
Yeah, I think all of those things, and it's always great looking back in hindsight, and with my hindsight now, it was all of those things. It was not knowing any different, not knowing any better. I thought that being a founder, an entrepreneur, a business owner, whatever you refer it as, I thought that meant that I had to work all the time. I just, I had to do 16-hour days. I had to work weekends. And when I go on holiday, I'd take my laptop. And I thought, if I'm not working, then I'm not putting enough effort in. If I'm not doing something, then if I'm not putting every ounce of effort I can, and then why do I deserve to succeed? So it was a combination of those, not understanding how to implement some boundaries, not understanding how to structure my day, not understanding how to be effective and efficient in what I do. We never taught that, right? When are we ever taught that stuff? So it was just that combination of everything. We overwhelm the sense of responsibility as well. I think as the business grew, we were responsible for more people, more children, more money. And it just kind of got out of control, really. I guess.
Yeah, it's so the reason I laugh, it's like the balancing new business and everything, and there is that real real need or want, because well, sometimes you enjoy doing the stuff, other times it's a, really fight to stay alive. So how have you resolved that in your mind now? And I guess this is going to lead on to what you're doing with Breaking Busy.
Yeah, I think the one word is knowledge. I changed what I do and how I do it just through learning some stuff. It's how we evolve, right? It's how we develop through education and learning. So near the end of our business, in the last sort of 12 months of our business, like our staff were kind of working the same as me, our head office staff, and they were busy. They were getting their burnt out. They were, we had that eye roll around the office. Oh, when am I going to get that done? That kind of attitude, going home frustrated because I haven't actually done anything, but they've been busy all day. So at that point, I knew something had to change for our staff, otherwise we'd all be on pills,
Yeah.
So I did a lot of reading, a lot of research around productivity and busyness and ways to work, how we work. I did a lot of research, probably about 12 months research, reading, looking at research articles, reading books, and I gathered information. I learnt things that I never knew about how to deal with my emails, how to understand when I'm procrastinating, what I can do about it, how to identify and understand my personal flow, when I work best. So just lots of information, lots of reading, and the big thing, and I learnt it with my staff because I did a session and kind of said, hey, go and implement this. But my failing there was that they had certain behaviours and habits that were ingrained for years. And I spent an hour in a session telling them, this is what you need to do now. But when it all got too hard, they just went back to what they knew. Mm-hmm. So any change has got to be a genuine change of behaviour. Otherwise, as I said, we're conditioned over this period of work to just say yes to jobs, take on more tasks, do as many tasks as we can, look like we're busy all the time, and that's how we're conditioned when we're in the workplace. So to break that conditioning and do something new, it takes time to embed those neural pathways, right? So, and that's kind of what I do now, is I help people create that change by repetition, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Mm. What role do you think self-awareness plays in this journey? I suppose in a mental health journey, being self-aware or being aware of where you are today, things is really important. But when you go on to behavioural change, and we're probably talking, behavioural change can take whatever the, I've heard doing something 7 times, and I've also heard 70 days. There's different ones, but depending on how long it is, you need to be self-aware of all the other things going on in your life, so you can be present doing those tasks. So, what role do you think that kind of plays in your journey? And
I think self-awareness is huge, and because you can't change something if you don't know what it is you're changing. Mm-hmm. So you need to understand about yourself, or what's working or what's not working. I think the challenge is that for most of us, self-awareness comes with maturity. So the challenge, I guess, is how do we get our 20-something young people who are just starting out in the workforce, how do we get them to be self-aware and to reflect on what they're doing and how they're doing it? I wasn't when I was 22 or 23. I couldn't care less. But I was talking to someone the other day, and he was my age, and I'm 50, and I said, look, my goal is I don't want people to get to 50 before they understand the last 30 years they've been working. They've been working wrong. They've been doing, they didn't have to work the way they've been working. So how can we change the way people are working? But as I said, and like you mentioned with self-awareness, you've got to be aware of what you're doing before you can change it.
And I think the other one that goes sort of links in with this is to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Or vulnerability. I mean, hugely in the connection space and having a good yarn. I mean, part of that is the vulnerability to be say, well, actually, I haven't been. There's self-awareness, and then there's the getting to the vulnerable piece of, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, because you can be self-aware, right, but almost not admit it or agree with it.
That's
like,
right.
I know what I'm doing is not right, but I don't want to change it,
Yeah,
or
I'm too
I
proud
can't
or
change
too
it.
scared, whatever the thing is, to do that.
Yeah. And so I think that's really important too. And from a commercial perspective, that's a bit of a challenge I have in terms of referring to, because at the end of the day, what I do is all about well-being. It's just packaged differently. We talk about, like these, what you do, the end result is well-being, and it's fantastic. Encouraging conversations, encouraging opening up, and encouraging being vulnerable. I've got a good mate who's a PT instructor. What he does is around well-being too, from a physical activity perspective. So what I do is definitely around well-being, but it's trying to adjust how people work. But if I go to particularly business owners, or particularly old school business owners, and I talk about well-being, then they kind of shut up shop. I don't want to admit that my staff don't have positive well-being.
The rigor mortis sets in, as I say, it's a full stiffness of, and you can see it.
100%. And I think if our decision makers, if our senior leaders can be more vulnerable and say, hey, okay, maybe you're right. Maybe we do need some change because some of our people are exhausted or burnt out. I mean, the stats show that 1 in 2 of us have been burnt out in the last 12 months. So, that the stats are there, right? But there's just this lack of vulnerability, I suppose, and being able to accept that maybe in their workplace and their teams there is something that needs to change.
What do you think the kind of role of social media would have in impacting this? So there's that thing around being a perfectionist, making it look like, and you want to look like you're succeeding.
Yeah. It's interesting. I use LinkedIn more now than I ever have. And I think LinkedIn, while it has its challenges, is an overwhelmingly positive place.
I agree with that.
Yeah. And I think it's not... but it's positive in a different way, and it's saying, hey, if you do this, you'll be awesome. It's not, look at me, I did this, and I am awesome. LinkedIn is almost kind of promoting this culture of being awesome. This is how you can be awesome. Whereas I think the traditional or the common social media, Facebook, Twitter, it's about me. And I can put up whatever image I like of me. I could be having the shittest year, but choose the best photos to give this perception that I am just awesome and I'm having a great year and I'm I'm successful. I don't need any intervention or whatever. So I think, and again, as our young people are very impressionable, particularly through their teenage years and in their early 20s, and our young people don't have the maturity yet to question necessarily what they see. So what they see is what they believe. So they see this person living the absolute most awesome life, and they believe that is true. That is what it is. So I think social media has a lot to do with it. But how do you change it? I think that's the...
Well, we were talking before coming... Do we say on air? I don't know what the
term
is.
I don't know. I like the phrase on air though.
Before coming on the microphone, how do we get people comfortable with failure? Because if failure, then you can grow and you can be more resilient and things like that. There's a lot of... This is a thing I've been pondering, as we were talking about before. Yeah. How do you think we get more people comfortable with that and being able to try new things?
We did briefly speak about this before we came on here, before the big red light went on. And I said to you at that point that I think my answer will be a little bit contentious, and because it goes against what we do in society now. I think to be comfortable failing, you have to take risks. but you also, like you have to know that you've failed. We're teaching this, the generation of kids that, you don't win or lose. And if you fail an exam, you can do it again. So there's no emphasis put on failure. And if there's no emphasis put on failure, you don't fail. Then if you can't fail, you can't learn from that. So what's wrong with losing? There's nothing wrong with losing a game of netball or a game of football. It's, in life there are winners and losers, and you win in terms of you get the job, you lose, you didn't get the job. You win in terms of you get the pay rise, you lose, you didn't get. There's winners and losers everywhere. They're not necessarily phrased or framed as winners and losers, but that is life. You win an auction for a house, you lose the auction for a house. Doesn't matter. We're always winning or losing or learning. And I remember I listened to a podcast called My First Million, and the guy on there said that, he was talking about failure, and he was saying how frustrated he is over this perception that we shouldn't fail. We will all fail. Every single one of us will fail, probably more than once. Whether it is failing on a test, or it's failing a driver's license, or it's failing in business like I did. Ultimately, that's what I did. But for us to learn from those things, for us to become resilient, we've got to fail. We've got to fall out of a tree. Falling out of a tree wouldn't be a successful climb, right? That's a failure of a climb. Yeah. But the stuff that we learn from those things is significant.
Yeah, I mean, I call my business failure. It was just I say successfully failed, but it's the learning that you learn a lot more to move forward and grow. And I think there's definitely an area there of getting, there's the vulnerability, there's the self-awareness, there's being comfortable with failing at something until you're good at it.
And there's nothing wrong with failing. Nothing wrong with failing. And I tell my kids that, I don't care if you fail. All I want you to do is, maybe if you fail, have a bit of a think about why, and just don't make that same mistake. And sometimes we will make the same mistake, but what does it matter? It doesn't matter. And I think we learn. I remember when our business went into liquidation, it failed, and we referred to me as a successful failure too. And my success, the reason I say successful failure is because my successes are, like you've just said, what I learned from that period of time in my life. And we hear this all the time. Oh, you've got to learn from your failures, learn from your failures, and that sentiment, that phrase is thrown around quite a lot, right? And it wasn't until I failed, and then I spent some time reflecting. I thought, man, that is so true. The stuff I learnt from that period was stuff that I would never have learnt if I hadn't gone through that. And it's important for me, the stuff I learnt personally is important. It's added value to me as a person. And I couldn't have learnt that if I hadn't gone through what I went through.
And now you're applying it through Breaking Busy, right?
Well, I'm trying to. I'm hoping to. It's very new. Breaking Busy is very new. But essentially, I guess when it all boils down, what I'm trying to do through Breaking Busy is avoid people falling into the same trap that I did. Avoid people reaching burnout, reaching exhaustion, so they can go home to their families at the end of the day and be present with their families, not be constantly thinking about what they haven't done at work, what they need to do tomorrow, or what they should have done or shouldn't have done, or I mean, when everything boils down, if I can stop somebody or prevent somebody from making the mistakes I made, and that they can lead a healthier life before they get to that epiphany, then fantastic.
Yeah, I think we could all use some of that. I think so. How can our listeners find you?
Craig at breakingbusy.co.nz or breakingbusy.co.nz website. I'm on LinkedIn too. Just Craig Fortune on LinkedIn. And I'm just happy to chat with if anybody even wants to have a conversation. I've been doing recently, which is I think how I met you, isn't it, Matthew? I have been doing a whole lot of connecting with people, which I really enjoyed, and by connecting I mean sitting down, having a coffee, face to face, just having a chat. And I've found that to be just really enlightening. I've met some wonderful people, made some wonderful connections, none of them business connections, but just met some fantastic people and had some fantastic yarns.
Here we go. You said chats a couple of times.
Yeah,
no,
and I
it's a
just,
yarn.
I think, and that's why I love what you're doing with the yarns, and because I think it's so underrated. You know, just go and sit down at a chair across a table and talk to someone. Just talk. Doesn't have to be talk about your cat. Talk about I don't care, but really connect with someone. And again, I love the idea of the yarnsman, and I think if we can connect more and create more community, I think we'll just have less societal issues, won't we?
Yeah, it's increasing social health, which is connection, and that's what we're all about.
Yeah.
Well, Craig, thank you very much for coming to the Yarnsman podcast studio today.
No worries.
Really appreciate you, Yarn, and we look forward to seeing how things develop with Breaking Busy.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you very much, and I appreciate the invite. It was fantastic to chat with you.
Good man. Thank you.
Cheers.